Hello, and welcome to the State of 911 webinar series hosted by the NHTSA National 911 Program. My name is Brian, and I'll be the moderator for today's session. This webinar series is designed to provide useful information for the 911 stakeholder community about federal, state, and local participation in the planning, design, and advancement of 911. It includes real experiences from leaders utilizing these processes throughout the country. In today's session, PEMA will provide an overview of the online data gathering portal, which allows agencies to work with its PSAPs partners to capture multiple data points. Later in the session, you will hear about the Pennsylvania's PSAP progression from a county-based focus pre-2016 to a regional-based focus in place today. Next slide. Today's webinar is being recorded and will be posted on 911.gov. For more information on the National 911 Program webinars, access to archived recordings, or learn from the National 911 Program, please visit 911.gov. For closed captioning, hover at the bottom of the Zoom screen for meeting controls and then click the CC button to start viewing the captioning. Feedback or questions about the webinars can be sent to nhtsa.national911@dot.gov. The National 911 Program would like to make you aware the Document and Tools section of the 911.gov website has been updated with new resources and improved access. 911 stakeholders are encouraged to submit links and documents that would be of use and interest to your 911 colleagues, including policy documents, plans, and reports across several topics such as governance, management, technical, operations, post-crash care, standards and best practices, and technical information. You may access the webpage under the Resources drop-down menu or scan the QR code in the bottom right corner of this slide. Content can be submitted by clicking the online submission form on the top right side of the Docs and Tools page. The National 911 Program would also like to invite you to visit the 911 Telecommunicator Tree of Life and share the name of a remarkable 911 telecommunicator who has inspired you. Share your story at 911treeoflife.org to honor a special 911 telecommunicator who is making a difference in your community. Please note that all participants' phone lines have been put in listen-only mode, and this webinar is being recorded. To ask questions of our presenters, feel free to take one of two actions. Using Zoom's QA feature located on the bottom of your screen in the meeting's controls, you can enter your question at any time during the presentation, and it will be entered into queue. Hover your mouse over the bottom of the page to access the meeting controls. Or to ask your question live, use the raise hand feature to request your phone line to be unmuted, and you'll be called upon to ask your questions. Individuals registered for this webinar will receive access to today's PowerPoint presentation and the webinar recording. With that, I'd like to introduce our first speakers for today. First is Jeff Boyle, the Executive Deputy Director of PEMA. Jeffrey Boyle is the Executive Deputy Director of the Pennsylvania Emergency Management Agency, and Jeff is responsible for strategic planning, policy development, and management of Pennsylvania's 911 program. With him today is Bruce Butler, and Bruce currently serves as the 911 Program Administrator. And before joining PEMA, Bruce served as the Director of Public Safety in Susquehanna County, Pennsylvania for over 9 years. Bruce is responsible for overseeing all administrative components of Pennsylvania's 911 program. Jeff, I'll turn it over to you.
Good afternoon, everybody. It's Jeff Boyle, Executive Deputy Director at PEMA. In 2015, we had new legislation in Pennsylvania that led to many improvements in our 911 system and really helped facilitate our transition to next generation 911. Probably the best thing the legislation did for Pennsylvania was help PEMA at the state office develop a very good working relationship with our county partners. Through that relationship, we have collectively identified and implemented many changes to our 911 program. And we are very happy to have the opportunity today to talk to you about two of those changes. First, we'll talk about data standardization. We've implemented a framework to help generate reliable and consistent information from all of our PSAPs, regardless of size or capability. Then we'll provide a demo of our PSAP portal application that we use to automate many aspects of our 911 program. Next slide, please. Simply put, good data drives good decisions. Having complete, reliable, and consistent data has been extremely important for our program. For example, good data has been very beneficial with supporting reauthorization of our law. We're going through those discussions right now. It's been really helpful with budgeting our grant funds looking ahead to future years. And we've also been able to do things such as identify gaps in PSAP training programs, then target investments to address those gaps. To promote data standardization among our PSAPs, we've taken a 4-step approach. So first, we defined a standard chart of accounts, or for lack of a better term, a common way to group expenses. This standard chart of accounts, known as cost types and cost categories, serves as the foundation for many functions in our program. For example, when a PSAP report costs to us, they use the cost types and cost categories. When they complete a grant application, they do it using the cost types and cost categories, and every county must submit a plan to us. And obviously the cost types, cost categories serve as the format for that plan document. We've also defined reporting standards. So it's a standard chart of accounts. There is also a standard way for information to be reported to us. Just as an example, on the financial side, all costs must be reported using the modified accrual basis of accounting, and we provide our counties with guidance on exactly how to do that. The third step, now that we have a chart of accounts, we have standards, you need an easy, simple way for the PSAPs to report information to us. And we did that through our PSAP portal application, which we'll demo today. Then the last step is quality control. Any information that comes into our portal, our team does review it here to make sure it is reported according to our program requirements. Through these efforts, it has really helped generate consistent and reliable information among all of our PSAPs. And this framework, this effort has really been the foundation towards automating many of the processes in our 911 program in our PSAP portal application. Next slide, please. We'll do a demo of the PSAP portal application here in a few moments, but I want to give you some background on the application itself. So this is the landing page when a PEMA personnel or a PSAP personnel accesses the application. The application is intended as a one-stop shop for PEMA and our PSAP partners to meet the requirements of our legislation and administer all aspects of Pennsylvania's 911 program. The concepts, functionality, requirements were all developed within our office. The application was developed over a 2-year period. There are 6 modules in the application. They are represented by the tiles in the middle of the screen. 6 modules are planning, inventory, finance, training, admin, and help. Our demo today is really going to focus on the finance, planning, and inventory modules. Next slide, please. Just to give you some background on the finance module, key functions in here are cost reporting. Our PSAPs do report all costs to us. They do report costs funded by the 911 fees and costs not funded by 911 fees. Our objective is to get the total cost of the 911 system here in Pennsylvania. PEMA at the state office uses this application to review those costs to make sure they're eligible and reported according to our guidelines, going back to quality control. That amounts to us reviewing about 6,000 line items every single year. It takes about a 1.5 to 2-month period for our team to do that. We also have a grant program here in Pennsylvania to support 911 service. This module handles all aspects of the grant program, from populating and submitting a grant application to actually generating the grant agreement that goes out to the counties. Then on the back end, after an award, monitoring, quarterly progress reporting, reporting grant expenses, reporting payments. And lastly, our counties and at the state office, we do have the ability to query data and run reports from the expense data. One example is the FCC Net 911 Act. When they ask us for our total cost for the 911 system here in the state, we simply query the data from this application, enter it into the report. Next slide, please. And before we get into the demo, just want to touch on the planning module. So under our legislation, every county is required to submit a 911 system plan every 2 years. We wanted to make this a useful application for the PSAPs, not a check the box requirement. So it really was designed as a communication tool for our PSAPs to highlight their accomplishments, their challenges, future plans, future needs, etc. There is a planning tool wizard in the application. It walks the PSAP through how to complete their plan. And there are 5 sections. First section is PSAP overview. This is the executive summary. The next 2 sections, revenue and expenditures, they look towards the past. how the PSAP was funded, where did the money go to. Section 4 is governance, talks about how the PSAP is managed, mutual aid, etc. The last section, plans by cost type, there goes cost types again, really looks towards the future. And this is really an important section for our program at the state level. In here, the PSAPs are going to identify costs for the next 5 years. They're going to verify the accuracy of their inventory data, do a self-assessment of compliance with next-gen requirements, and assess their next-gen 911 progress. One thing I do want to note, our next-gen progress tool is really geared towards Pennsylvania and walking a PSAP through their migration to next-gen 911 service, all the dependencies, all the steps they have to complete at their level. Once all the information is entered, the tool will generate a plan document for the PSAP. You can see a couple screenshots on the screen. And on the back end, there's a lot of good data generated for the state program. For example, the county plans help us develop a multi-year funding plan for our grants, helps us identify opportunities for partnerships or procurement. For example, we have a variety of PSAPs that need a phone system refresh over the next 3 years. That's directing us towards doing a state level procurement to address those needs. Also, very good data for variance analysis, helps us identify trends. We can guide investments or take actions at the program level. That's a very high level overview of the PSAP portal application. I'm now going to turn it over to Bruce Butler to give you a live demo.
Thank you. We're ready when you are.
Go ahead, Bruce.
Hey, good afternoon, everybody. This is Bruce Butler. Glad to join you this afternoon to give you a quick view of our PSAP portal. As Director Boyle mentioned, this has been in development for about 2 years. Part of our development included internal review of past practices and different tools we've used in the past, as well as an intensive collaboration with our PSAP partners to find out and identify what works best for them. Jeff mentioned also we'll be focusing today primarily on planning, inventory, and finance. You can see on the right side other tiles that address such as admin training and help are there as well for our PSAP partners. It is important to notice that our admin side of things, all of the PSAPs user technology is PSAP managed, with PEMA focusing primarily on working with the delegated admin who would be the point person for that PSAP in collaboration to make sure users and all have the access they need. One of the tiles that is important to us, again, because of legislation, is our inventory. Highlighting by looking at this, you can see the vision is that all of the PSAPs from a PEMA perspective are available to us. As we go in and look at the different types of inventory, again, repeating what Jeff mentioned about cost category and cost type, it's important to us that we all follow that same format that transitions over into our inventory as well. You can see the PSAPs have the ability to enter a great deal of data, which is available to not only them, not only to their stakeholders, but also to us in the need of different types of situations. Connectivity, just a quick example here, also gives the PSAP contact information, as well as ability to provide high-level overview of particular parts of the EZNet and other types of components with connectivity, which is important to us as well. Let's take you out of there. Okay, so as we roll back into the inventory process, let's go back here. We move into from inventory, you can see again, each PSAP has the ability to edit it. We have moved on to quarterly process review with our grants, which we'll explain in a second. We've encouraged all of our PSAPs to take that same approach when they're looking at their inventory to ensure that the inventory is kept up to date as best they possibly can. Planning focus, Jeff did do the beginning of the highlight of the planning focus here. One of the things that's important here is that as the PSAP developed their plan, we did collaborative work with them to make sure that there was information that they had in terms of entry, in terms of capture of what they wanted, as well as what we needed to see. So you can see again in the total overall side of the plan, the executive summary encompassed such things as the overall introduction to the county, a PSAP overview, which gave a detailed description of the PSAP and its characteristics, service detail, yes.
It's Kyra. You still got the map for the EZNet up? Are you back at the tool now? You may need to stop share and reshare.
Okay. Are we there now?
We are, thank you.
I apologize for that. So again, what we're showing now is the actual plan itself. This is the intro page to the plan. Part of the executive summary gives the PSAPs the ability to do their overview, as well as things such as service, detail, identifying fire, EMS, police, municipalities, etc. Additional services, which gives them the ability to highlight different areas the PSAP handles, and again, gives full visibility to the work that's done within the PSAP level. And then service demand, which is where the PSAP has the ability and required as well to compile the total wireline, wireless, et cetera, call volume data on an annual basis, including the 10-digit calls, CAT events. All of that data on an annual basis is compiled and provided for the PSAP there. Jeff mentioned revenue and expenditures, the same concept. That's currently working on the past type of things, offers the opportunity for the PSAP also to detail where and why certain changes may have occurred, which not only on an individual PSAP level, but on a statewide basis gives us visibility to potential trends that may be occurring. Governance gives us the ability to put in the documentation of regional shared governance information, statewide contracts, et cetera. And the most important part for us in terms of the contact with the plan is it gives the PSAP the ability to identify their overview of the plan in a particular cost category. And we'll go down and we'll look at CAT here, as well as the state minimum requirements Jeff had mentioned. So the PSAP has the ability to do their self-assessment to identify where they are compliant. It also gives them the ability to go into expenditures and then expenditure anticipated change. This being the most critical part, where a PSAP has the ability to identify short-term needs in a particular cost category and then migrate to long-term needs, which identifies potential changes or potential enhancements in financial need the PSAP may have for years to come. We go out into 2026 in this particular category. So from a planning perspective, it gives us a great deal of information, as well as the lead for us to work with the PSAP in the development of that particular agenda. Finance. So this is the area that we have become very vocal with in terms of our communication with our PSAPs. You can see that the PSAP has 5 tiles they work with, the user guide being where the tools would sit for them to have information on how to use this particular module. Grants would give them the ability to look at their grant applications, grant agreements, and view projects. Grant applications is a home-based level set where the PSAP can look at a particular project that they're involved with for an extended period of time, as well as identify as it loads. This is a larger one. It'll give you all the detail related to the grant, the milestones of that particular project, the budget line for that project, which also gives you the status of where each individual milestone may sit. And then finally, at the bottom of this, and you can see this is a quite large one, the PSAP also would have the ability to overview any quarterly progress would appear in the bottom of this. So you can see that the PSAP has full visibility to look at the different ways to track, monitor, and move projects forward. When we're looking at the grant agreements, they would be the uploaded documentation of the executed agreement. So it's a quick, easy access for our PSAPs. And then viewing projects would be that ability for all of the PSAPs in the state to view any and all projects that exist, have been released and approved by PEMA. This gives them a lot of visibility, not only internally, but within a regional level, as well as a statewide level, and potentially benchmark projects that may be ongoing for those counties that may be looking at shared services or other ways to look at the way a project is working or the cost of that particular project. Quarterly reports, which goes hand in hand with our 15% projects, gives the PSAPs the ability to go in on a quarterly basis and go identify what activity may have occurred in that project. As this loads, you'll see that this particular county has identified that all of their projects in Q2 are currently active projects. They've identified in one particular project that they have a milestone completion. The nice part about the way this is set up is it's set up in that when the PSAP comes to this page, it's visibly not overwhelming. It's identified where the PSAP can go in and open and identify where they want to be and what they want to record. So you can see that as they expand, it then gives them the ability to handle whatever need may be within that project. These are submitted on a quarterly basis to PEMA, and the bottom part of the report will give them an overall picture of what payments and what expenditures they've submitted on the quarter. All of this data is then transitioned into the grant application homepage for full visibility on the project, whether it be an individual PSAP, a regional or larger scale project. Gives us full contractual ability to look at how everything is moving and identify where certain benchmarks may need to be watched. From the finance annual reporting side of things, we have two different levels. The deferred expenses is a way that PSAPs can go in and identify those costs that may go over a calendar year. So for example, in Pennsylvania, we record the expenditures on a calendar basis. So if an expense transitions into the following year, they have the ability to defer that expense through this project. They can go in and simply add the expenditure here by cost type and cost category. Quick demo to show you, because it is important to also note that part of our deferrals gives our PSAPs the ability to take a 5-year contract and expand it over a 5-year period without having a lot of extra work involved. So as the PSAP entered the particular first year and uploaded the documentation, they would simply add expenditure. You would see the top portion remains the same, but it gives them the ability to add an existing year and a following year for multiple years to come. Also, then that documentation would present in the following year's annual report automatically for the PSAP. So the deferred category has been a big enhancement. We're very proud of that. As you go back to finance again and then annual reporting, the annual report side gives the PSAPs the ability to look at different types of expenditures as these expenditures go over time. The familiarity to this is important to us. So this is a screens that the PSAPs have been used to. It is kind of our base of our critical nature of the way this PSAPs report on the annual side. So the familiarity is important. The uniform fund activity screen, the PSAP has the ability, their PSAP balance will carry forward. Their quarterly disbursement, PEMA pays quarterly disbursements based on surcharge, will appear automatically for them. They would self-enter their interest. And you can see that this is a living, breathing page that will change over time as they put in expenditures, as they work with their projects, this documentation will change. PSAPs have the ability also and the requirement to add, as we mentioned earlier, wireline and wireless detail and different types of CAD statistics. They have the ability also to go in and add to their reserve. You can see that this reserve, and again, this is non-going, but they can add numbers to the reserves. And formula funding. Formula funding, the critical nature here is, again, that shows in a visually appealing way. The PSAP can add the expense. You'll see it appears one line, and then the record detail appears below. Adding an expenditure, very simple. Again, as Jeff mentioned, cost type, cost category, critical to us. The vendor name is a pre-populated entry, their description, and the ability to change their form based on the type of the way they make that expenditure. Gives them great flexibility in that area. So once a PSAP submits that particular report from a PEMA perspective, this is a tile that will appear owned in the PEMA. This gives us the ability to do expenditure review. You'll see when it loads that it gives us the ability also to do information related to, let's hit that there again. Now we'll see if it comes up. So there we go. Sorry about that. A lot of data in there. So it gives us the ability to look at a particular PSAP, look at a particular line item if need be, a cost type, cost category, depending on what we may be reviewing or what we may be studying. But in this particular case, you'll see that it's given us the ability to pull the Lehigh County where we were looking at a second ago and render decisions and then communicate directly back and forth with our PSAP partners as we progress through. So throughout the annual reporting and the grants quarterly report, there's also tools that the PSAPs have been provided for different financial management, from uploading of files and county-related accounting documentation. So in closing, PEMA's goal was to create an efficient tool that meets the needs of reporting, quality assurance, and critical future planning for our PSAPs, while at the same time giving them a tool that's functional and usable within their operation planning and budgeting primary focus. We continue to move positively in that direction and rely heavily on our partners to continually upgrade the tool in a way that works best for them. So Kira, I'm ready to turn it back to you now.
Well, thank you for that information, Jeff and Bruce. We'll start the QA portion of our session now. We do have a couple questions in our Q&A section, but as a reminder, to ask a question, you can use the QA feature located at the bottom of the screen or press the raise hand button so you can unmute your phone line. Our first question, actually, most of our questions are sort of related, is what is this platform built on? And was it built by PEMA, or is it, or did you contract a vendor?
So we developed all the concepts, all the requirements for development were developed in our office, and they're really geared towards our legislation and our business process needs. But much of the functionality can be geared towards any 911 program. And then we simply, once we had the requirements, used a Commonwealth subcontractor to actually develop the application. What it's built on, I don't have that information in front of me, but definitely can go back and get that and provide that to the group.
Okay. I think that takes care of the first couple questions we've got. Next is a question of, can we see the training and certification section functions? Jeff, if you want to speak to that, or Bruce?
Yeah, sure. So we actually have a separate application currently that we're going to be migrating into this PSAP portal, but to describe what the functionality is, it's existing. We just need to move it into this application. So in Pennsylvania, every PSAP is required to document the curriculum, policies, and procedures of their training, certification, and QA/QI programs. The application also gives them the ability to maintain a telecommunicator roster, a training record, list of certifications, etc. And then PEMA uses this application to also do compliance work on those programs. So it is existing in a separate application, currently working with the developers now to move that functionality into this PSAP portal. So it is a one-stop shop, and I'll be happy to provide any information on it outside of this presentation.
Great. Our next question is regarding governance, and obviously it's, PEMA specific, but do the county PSAPs and PSAPs in Pennsylvania effectively report directly to PEMA by legislation, or is there a choice, or are they required basically to use this portal?
So under our legislation, the county has responsibility for providing 911 service in their jurisdiction, but our legislation does require PEMA to submit an annual report to the General Assembly that covers revenue and expenses from the 911 fund. So with that requirement, we've had to work hand in hand with the PSAPs to lay out how we're going to achieve that objective. And this annual reporting process using this tool is how we came about to meet that legislative requirement.
So is that now codified in your state rules, or is it still just under the legislation intent?
Under legislation, but we do have clear guidelines. So in our program guidance, there is a requirement for PSAPs to at least submit expenses to us on an annual basis. And part of our guidance, it does require to report costs funded by the 911 fee and costs not funded by the 911 fee. And that information has become very important, especially as we've gone through reauthorization of our legislation.
Do PSAPs see only their own data, or are they able to see other PSAPs data comparatively?
So most of the time, they're only able to see their own data. The only exception to that is approved grant projects. So as part of our grant program, for any application that we do approve, we do open those up for any PSAP to view those, to see what kind of projects are going across the Commonwealth, if there's any opportunities to leverage those projects, etc. We do lock down the supporting documentation. That is not freely available, but they can see the data and the actual grant application itself.
So building off of that, and I think I can see where the answer is going to be, but is any of this information available to the general public from transparency, sunshine, FOIA laws, like of just putting that information out there?
Yeah, so we are very transparent here in Pennsylvania. That is one thing that we focused on. So much of the information in our portal, we actually publish annually in our annual report. Anybody can go on our website and essentially you'll see an income statement by PSAP and a lot of information that comes strictly from this portal.
Okay. Great. That's all the questions we have for this section. And we appreciate it. So we are now going to move on to the second half of our content today, which stays in highlighting work in Pennsylvania, And for the second half, Jeff Boyle will discuss the PSAP regionalization efforts, both from a historical and a forward thinking. And he is going to be joined for this section by three colleagues. First is Bill Schertzer, who is the program manager at PEMA. Bill joined PEMA after a successful career with Verizon, where he supported 911 services for many years. Bill is responsible for overseeing Pennsylvania's transition to NG 911 service. Additionally, Frank Giannetti is the Director of Public Safety in Mercer County, where he oversees the 911 center as part of his duties. Frank has been a lifelong public servant as he continues to also serve as a law enforcement officer and firefighter. Frank also serves as the Vice Chair of Region 13 Southwest PA Emergency Response Group, which has been a progressive region with 911 system regionalization efforts. And finally, they are joined by Rob McLafferty, who serves as the 911 coordinator in Butler County, where he oversees the operations of the county 911 center. Rob is a dedicated public servant and continues to serve as a firefighter in his community, in addition to his 911 duties. Rob is the chair of the Southwest 911 Advisory Committee and has been instrumental partner in 911 system regionalization projects in Southwest Pennsylvania. So, Jeff, why don't you and your team take it away for the second half of our webinar?
All right, thank you. So under Pennsylvania's legislation, 15% of our revenue collections are set aside for what's termed statewide interconnectivity. Legislation that doesn't define what that is, but it was intended to support our migration to next generation 911 and regionalization of 911 systems. So we had to work very closely with our county partners to figure out exactly what that means, how we're going to implement this funding source. We've made a lot of really good progress when it comes to next generation 911 and also when it comes to regionalization of 911 systems. So really, really happy today to highlight some of the progress here in Pennsylvania, not only from a state level when it comes to next gen 911, but some really good work that's going on within our county PSAPs and within our regions, and have two of our directors here today to highlight some of the great work they're doing. But we'll start off with the next gen update, and I'll turn it over to Bill Schertzer.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for joining us. What you're looking at here is a map from, this is a map that you can access on our next gen 911 dashboard from our PEMA website. But what this does, it's a progress map on where we're at in our next gen 911 deployment. Visually, from the perspective, anything in blue has been migrated to next generation 911. Their call traffic is now processing through the next gen core services data centers that we have deployed in the state, and then the others in different colors at different phases of the deployment. We took a 5-phase approach to our deployment in Pennsylvania. We currently have 33 counties, 30 PSAPs migrated. That phased approach started with data collection. Every county started there in that phase. In the data collection phase, we started out with site surveys, which included identifying current configurations. While at the state level and the counties understood their current configurations, we wanted to make sure that Comtech, our next gen 911 vendor here in Pennsylvania, understood what those configurations were. So they went in, did site surveys, identified CHE configurations, network connectivity, tech services, and any other shared systems, and with whom they may have been sharing those systems with, trunks, positions, alley formats, anything that would set us up for moving forward. It also came down to physical assessments for available rack space for any equipment that we may need to deploy at the sites for the next gen connectivity. Electrical requirements, including UPS, ensuring environmentals met the requirements, and access and security of the equipment. Once we identified and completed those site surveys, we identified any deficiencies that didn't meet the requirements, provided those deficiencies to the counties and PSAPs, asked them to get quotes on whatever was needed to remediate the deficiencies that were identified. And then they submitted quotes, and we give a grant funds to remediate those deficiencies that were identified. Once they got through the data collection phase, we then got into the discussions and network design discussions with the PSAPs. These regions came about based on the sharing of systems that were already done across the state. Northern Tier, West Core, those areas already shared CHE and other systems. as well as EZNets had been established in those regions already. So we gave the PSAPs the options to either keep their existing EZNet configurations, or they could migrate to the state. Some regions, depending on what they had, they didn't just do call handling over their EZNets. They may have shared radio, shared CAD, shared recorder. Some chose to move, some chose not to. And that really just defined the network design that we were going to go forward in that region. We also identified the POIs that we were going to connect to from a state network perspective into the region. So that was all part of the network design phase. Then we got into the system build phase. In the system build phase, we defined policy routing rules, finalized the network builds, alley format builds into the NGCS and the CHE, and the NGCS delivery of the ATP and supporting documentations were provided. Once we had all of the design and the builds done, the design included dual fiber connectivity to every PSAP site if it didn't already exist. We got into the validation and testing phase. This is where we executed the acceptance test plan. We tested everything from the network connectivity into a PSAP or a region, failover testing of those connections, ensuring that each data center was connected to each PSAP location, and we could process calls through each if during a failure. We also did failovers between a lot of our PSAPs in the regions have shared CHE systems, having 2 hosts with multiple remotes. And in those cases, we did failover testing of the connections between the host sites to ensure we didn't lose or knew the actions that were going to be taken with the call delivery once migrated to the next generation. As part of the ATP process, we also, the final phase is to migrate their text. Text is provided as part of the next gen 911 solution. So in order to do the ATP for text, it had to be migrated. So the final phase of ATP was to migrate text, test it, ensure it was working 100%, and then leave it. So they're actually every county that has migrated their first service on the next gen system was text service. After that happened, we had a go no go meeting with all the parties, including the PSAP, the CHE vendor, the CHE manufacturer, and continued to work to make sure or got their authorization to ensure that they were okay with the migration. Once we got to go, we scheduled the migration date, moved the traffic on the migration date, and they were live with their voice calls going over the system. Next slide, please. So our approach was always first about the priority to have call delivery on the system. While we have many EZNets in the state that are sharing more than just call delivery, Frank and Rob will speak to that in a little bit, but our first priority has been call delivery. We built an EZNet and a solution that was based on I3 standards. We have 2 data centers in the state, 1 east, 1 west. It was a private fiber-based EZNet based on I3 protocols. Call delivery is done via location-based routing and an I3 interface to the CHE. Once the call hits the NGCS, our providers are not delivering calls I3 end-to-end at this point in Pennsylvania, but we insisted upon taking that leap and doing location-based routing once the call hit the next gen core services. As I stated before, text to 911 is included for all PSAPs. Through this solution for next gen service, we also have a statewide MIS and next gen 911 dashboard. This is something that it's a tool. It provides visibility to PSAPs and to PEMA on the status of the service that we have deployed. It gives visibility to the EZNet connections from data center to data center, from data center to PSAP. It shows both redundant connections to each PSAP in a visual format. Also gives access to CDR data that we take in from the CHE and create the MIS solution. This was all developed as part of the solution, continues to be developed and refined. The other thing that we do see are the connections from OSPs into the next gen core services. So if we have an impact that's has impacted the call delivery from an OSP perspective, we do get notifications that the circuits are down from a given provider. It also comes with 24/7 system and security monitoring and cybersecurity monitoring, along with local on-site support for strong service level agreements. Next slide, please. This was built for the future. As I said, we have EZNet PSAP poised at our handoffs. They're at 100 megabit to 1 gigabit. We don't need anywhere near that bandwidth for the call delivery that we're doing, but we wanted to ensure we had PSAPs that could use it for other systems. Next gen deployment aligned with the shared call handling systems across the state, the different regions, and the system network sharing are done by varying degrees across Pennsylvania. Some PSAPs share systems and multiple systems, others share none. They had the opportunity to maintain and or migrate their state EZNets or their regional EZNets to the state network. As I said, they're sharing many systems from CHE to CAD, recorder, radio, and network. And the EZNet fiber builds have been leveraged by counties and regions to establish separate shared county network managed by county personnel. So essentially they're using our backbone fiber that we built out, have been given a wavelength that they are managing with routers that they install on the network. Next slide, please. So our next steps, as I stated, we built this for the future. We want to be able to migrate additional services over to the EZNet beyond call handling. We want to encourage additional system sharing by providing the network that will give them the capability to do that. And Jeff mentioned previously about a move forward to contract for statewide call handling system and any other possible procurements that could help to move that forward. We also want to promote and share success stories where we have shared systems in the state. We like to turn this over to Frank and Rob to give you some information and details on the sharing that they're doing in their region.
Thanks, Bill. You can go ahead and advance the next slide. Thank you, and good afternoon, everybody. In our region here, and you can see up on the screen, the Mercer, Lawrence, Venango, Butler region, and on all the other highlighted counties, we have several sharing projects that we do. One of them is called West Core, and you can see up at the top, it says West Core. And this is all, this is 13 counties that are involved with CHE, and we basically have 3 CHE hosts for those 13 counties. We recognized a while back that we couldn't do this alone anymore. I've been in 911 for 33 years. When we first started, we all had our own CHE, our own CAD, our own radio, our own recorder. And basically, as things have evolved and technologies have evolved, and certainly personnel has evolved, we recognize now that we can't do this anymore by ourselves. The 4 counties you see highlighted in yellow up at the top, we pretty much do everything together. We won't buy paper clips without each other knowing how many paper clips the others need. And being on the same CHE solution and working together on calls, and you can see how we all come together, we recognize that we could also, not just with CHE, but we could also with radio and CAD have a regional process that we could work together. We all needed a new CAD system. Mercer County was on a hexagon system, and Lawrence, Venango, and Butler were on an Interact system back whenever we started this. We started talking about what we could do to share CAD. Why would we want to do that? And you know, a lot of people do regional purchases of equipment, but we actually did a fully integrated CAD system for the 4 counties because we recognized 1, money saving, certainly 2, a big thing was backups. A lot of people run backup 911 centers, but who's going to operate them and how well will they perform? 3 personnel issues, and we're actually in the process right now of having dispatchers that go to each other's 911 centers to log in to make sure that things work properly from the perspective of taking calls for your own county, as well as taking calls from other counties. Working together makes the fringe call so much easier. So if I take a call in Mercer County that Venango, Butler, and Lawrence responders are responding to, I can put their units on scene. I can share my resources with them through my call takers, and they automatically see the call. We also share radio services through I-Cores with Mercer, Lawrence, and Butler, where we can actually get on each other's radio systems from their PSAP or our PSAP and be able to dispatch calls via radio as well as CAD and as well as CHE. So we have a fully integrated system. Sharing resources makes us better. It makes us all better. And with our current personnel situation, we can't stop the process of sharing things. We do have governance. We have a governance document, and Rob's going to talk a little bit more about that. We also got together and hired a consultant so that the 4 counties, we did demos for multiple CAD systems, and we came up with a CAD system that we thought would work for all of us. It was a very unique situation, and Rob's going to talk about nature codes and things like that we really needed to do. But this whole process was born out of Region 13. That highlighted area there. We've been sharing resources for a lot of years, not in particular things like this with 911, but certainly we share bomb squads and SWAT teams and explosive canines and command posts and everything else. And we recognized a long time ago that not every county needs every single thing. So it's really important with the sharing of resources to understand that our counties can do this. So we have 4 counties that you see highlighted in yellow with a CAD system with 1 disaster recovery site and 1 host system. And I'll let Rob talk about the rest of the slides, but the sharing of resources has been very, very valuable to us, and it's worked tremendously since we deployed it back in 2018. So Rob, go ahead.
Thank you, Director Janetti. And thank you all for the opportunity to speak today. It's always easy to talk about something that you're passionate about, and we're truly passionate about this regional CAD system. So if I could ask that we move to the next slide. 4 different PSAPs sharing 1 computer-aided dispatch system. We have 30 different positions, 440,000 is the population that's served. And we really, you can see we're just marketing geniuses here. We came up with, we had a regional CAD and weren't sure what to call it, so we called it RCAD. And really looking for how can we make this the simplest. And you see the quote from Mark Twain up there, and that's really what we wanted to do, was just come up with a simple answer for this complex situation. So if you move to the next slide, we'll talk about some of those. So a lot of folks, when they ask us about this, they say, well, are the counties the same? Or are you really geographically the same? And truthfully, not at all. We are all, with the exception of Lawrence and Venango, we're contiguous counties. We're all geographically close, but different geographic areas. The population varies. The county with the least population has slightly over 50,000, and to the largest county where we have 193,000. So a big difference in population, big difference in demographics and topography. So those were certainly some challenges that we had to look at. We had different types of what responders called themselves, and some of them following national guidelines, some of them following local. So there was a lot of different things, including local policies and procedures, that we needed to come together on. Of course, the pricing structure, we needed to come up with some way that it was fair. Obviously, it wouldn't be fair for the county that's the smallest population to be paying the same as the county with the largest population. And we ended up doing that as a per seat. We had to come up with the agreements. As Director Janetti mentioned earlier, it was helpful for us that we've had a lot of shared programs and a lot of shared agreements already. So we kind of had a template for that, but we still had to work through that. Having a combined population of now over 440,000 really limited the amount of vendors, CAD vendors, that could bid on this project. So that was a challenge. And as was referred to earlier, the nature codes. We started off with 1,000 nature codes between the 4 counties. The challenge for the nature code is all 4 counties have to have the same nature code because it's truly one CAD. It's truly one system with a disaster recovery in Lawrence County. So this hosted system, Butler County can't put in a code that is not in anywhere else, because as soon as that code's put in, it shows up in the rest of the CAD. So every county needs to have responses set for that code. So we really needed to pare down those codes. And as you can imagine, not necessarily the counties, but sometimes our responders were tied to codes. And where one county A may have a structure fire and label it as a barn or something else specific, and in Butler County, that may have just been a structure fire. All of those had to be pared down, and that was a challenge to bring it down to 200, but it's been a benefit for all of us. We wanted to make sure that our training was shared, and we say that training needed to be shared because we didn't want one county interpreting something a little different than the other county. So as we move to the next slide, we'll talk about some of the benefits. We knew right away this was going to be a cost savings. Certainly, as was mentioned before, the regional program, PEMA very vested into it and supported this program. So not only to help us there, but just as an overall cost savings to have one CAD system running 4 counties. We knew that it would be fully integrated. We knew that we'd have this disaster location, the disaster DR site in Lawrence County. We were happy to have that. One host county, one disaster recovery. If something happens, everybody's still up. We knew we were eliminating hardware, and we knew that we wanted it to function as one system. However, with the next slide, you're going to see some other benefits that may not have been quite as tangible at first. So one of the things that really maybe took us by surprise and worked better than what we had suspected was a reduced time to dispatch across the county. So you all know as 911 experts that County A takes a call, they take that information, they put it in the CAD, they realize that it's going to be an out-of-county response unit or an out-of-county agency is going to be added to it, and they pick up the phone, they call the other county, the other county's call taker takes that information, moves it to dispatch, and dispatch sends it out. Now, when that data is entered into the CAD, since it's the same CAD, we see that response right away. So it populates. If there is a response that's may have started in Butler County, but now we're requesting a Mercer unit, a Lawrence County unit, or a Venango unit, that populates on the screen right away. We don't need to make that phone call. We still do just to make sure they got it, but it's real time right away. We need this unit from your county. And it's reduced the amount of time just by an amount that was really surprising to us. It gives us real-time situational awareness. We can look at any point and see what's available or what's going on in other counties. So I can look up and see that, hey, Lawrence County, Mercer County, Venango County has this big incident going on. We share maps. That makes it a lot easier. Certainly our dispatchers can just look on there and see what's going on in any of the other counties and see where that's at. Director Janetti mentioned about the hot seating. So because of, and you see the next line about the backup centers, 3 of the 4 counties on the same radio system, that's a shared core. That means we can access each other's radio systems from our dispatch consoles. So we can literally move our folks if something would happen, if one of the counties, for whatever reason, the 911 center is no longer functioning, we can send our employees over and to one of the other centers, and before our employees get there, the other center can log in as the county that has to move and start taking calls right away. So it saves the need for that whole backup 911 center. We truly have the backup 911 center just built into this program. All 4 counties are in the same CHE, the same CAD system, and like I said, 3 out of 4 on the radio system. So everybody's familiar with it. It's the same login. It's not like you're bringing somebody into a system that they've never seen before. One of the other benefits that really popped out to us is if you can imagine today when you're struggling with something with your CAD or your CAD team's struggling and they're trying to figure something out, we have the benefit of calling or shooting a text to any of the other counties and saying, hey, have you experienced this, or what are you guys doing with this? And not only do you have the expertise that's in your county, but now we have that shared expertise that's bringing that all together, and we can just pick, and we do that several times a week. Somebody calls, or we have a responder say, hey, this happens in the other county, can you do this? And we'll make that change. I know we're moving close to time, so if we can move to the next slide. I just wanted to again thank everybody for their time and the opportunity. We really appreciate that, and I'll turn it over for questions.
Well, thank you, Jeff, Bill, Frank, and Rob. That was a great presentation. We do have some questions for you. As a reminder, to ask a question, you can use Zoom's QA feature located at the bottom of your screen, or press the raise hand button so we can unmute your line. We're going to start back in the beginning part of this with some technical questions. The first one is, when do you anticipate end-to-end NGI3 connections?
That's a really good question, and I don't know that we have a definitive answer on that, because it's really dependent upon the OSPs and what their capabilities are.
And the follow-up probably is, are you tracking when OSPs will be able to accept inbound I3 compliant PITA flow from private networks such as large commercial or education campuses with location data?
As of right now, no, but we are tracking and working with the network aggregator for the services for the OSPs into the system. Through some of that, we do have conversations with some of the OSPs and trying to identify where what their status is with moving to next gen I3 compliant, but not really a tracking on a OSP by OSP basis.
Okay, great. Next question is continuity of operations for each PSAP part of this program.
Yes. As part of the next gen service, they have policy routing definitions. The policy routing definitions that are built into the system as part of the call flow discussions. There is a mechanism by which the PSAPs can go in. If they have a failure, they can reroute their traffic or shut down their traffic, shut down their PSAP, and ultimately route traffic to a different destination. Many of the shared systems already have routing in place from their CHE perspective. In a lot of cases, working with the 911 directors or coordinators in the counties, they have duplicated that on the next gen service to allow for alternate routing to happen automatically between counties, between their partners. In cases like Mercer, Butler, where they have shared systems, and that makes a lot of sense, but they can also reroute traffic to 10-digit lines and any other destination they deem necessary. We've also established regional alternate routes where the PSAPs and regions have wanted to do that.
Okay, great. I think the next question is for the Westcore regionalization team, and that was, how were you able to deal with the politics between the counties? And I believe that's specific to CAD, and then who ultimately decided on which CAD to purchase and who administers the CAD?
I'll start out. You know, the politics were non-existent between us because we already had a relationship and we've done this. And so that was a great part of this. We demoed, I did hire a consultant, and we demoed several CAD systems as Rob mentioned. And we came to an agreement among the 4 counties on the one that we wanted. We went to our county commissioners, and we pitched the idea to them, and all of the county commissioners, so there's 12 county commissioners, they got together. They were very, very supportive, and they supported everything that all the decisions that we made. So we did have a governance document as well. Rob, you have anything to add?
No, I think just what you said, we literally sat in a room and went over all the benefits and advantages, disadvantages, and there were folks that certainly had some different opinions at first, but we all came to the resolution, and it was really unanimous.
Hey,
At the end of the day.
Well, we do have, I've got about 6 to 7 questions remaining, but we are running out of time. So what happens for those of you who have questions pending, we will get those questions to the team and they will be uploaded as part of the archival webinar on 911.gov. So with that, this concludes today's webinar. I want to thank again to PEMA and all of the speakers from Pennsylvania today, highlighting both topics. We appreciate everyone's participation. The archive version of today's webinar will be available in the following weeks on 911.gov. And the next webinar that we have scheduled is a 2-hour special session on Tuesday, August 29th, with a presentation on evidence-based intervention for telecommunicator health and wellness with Dr. Michelle Lilly and our own Kate Elkins, as well as a discussion of the benefits of quiet rooms and therapy dogs in PSAPs, highlighting Cook County, Illinois. We hope you'll be able to join us. Thank you and have a great day.